She laughed once, soft, too close, and I forgot what I was supposed to say. That's how it started. Not some grand confession, not a dramatic look across a room. Just a laugh that lingered a beat too long, caught between us like the air didn't want to move. Her name was Lena. 45, maybe. The kind of woman who moved like she didn't need to explain herself to anyone. There was always a calm around her, not cold, not detached, just composed. You could tell she'd lived through a few things and decided silence was safer than explaining. I was 26, newly moved into the small apartment next door. She and her husband lived in the corner unit. He was gone most days, a contractor, always on site. She stayed. You'd hear her sometimes, watering plants on the balcony, talking to the cat, humming something low and familiar. The first time we really spoke was over a broken light bulb. I was in the hallway, balancing on a chair, trying to twist the old bulb out. She appeared behind me, holding a grocery bag in one arm, and said, "You're about to fall." Her voice had that mix, warm and knowing, with an edge that made you want to say something worth her time. I turned too quickly, bumped my head on the light fixture, and she laughed. That same laugh that would stick with me for days after. "Here," she said, putting her bag down. "Let me." She didn't wait for permission, just stepped closer, steady hands brushing mine as she reached up. Her perfume was faint, something like citrus and rain, and I remember thinking it didn't smell like any perfume meant to impress. It smelled like her. "You're new here, right?" she asked. "Yeah. Just moved in last week." She nodded. "You picked the quiet building. Except for the walls, they talk." I smiled. "Is that a warning?" She tilted her head. "A little." There was a small silence after that, not awkward, just heavy. The kind that asks for a reason to end. She handed me the old bulb, her fingers grazing my palm longer than they needed to. "Careful," she said, "it's still warm." That's when I noticed the ring on her finger. Simple gold, faintly loose on her hand. It caught the hallway light, but she didn't seem to notice it much. After that, we started running into each other often, or maybe she allowed it. Late evenings when she'd bring out her trash just as I got home. Early mornings at the mailboxes. Always brief, always polite, but with something unspoken underneath. She'd ask little things. "How's the job? Eating enough? You live alone?" Each question felt simple, but her tone made it sound like she was trying to understand something else entirely. One night, it was raining. Power went out in half the building. I heard her outside my door, a small knock. "Do you have a candle?" she asked. Her hair was damp, clinging to her cheek, and the light from my phone threw soft gold over her skin. I gave her one. She held it between both hands like it was fragile. "Thanks," she whispered. Then, without stepping back, she looked up at me, the kind of look that doesn't ask, it waits. Her lips parted like she was about to say something more, but a door slammed down the hall. Her husband's voice echoed faintly from somewhere below. She blinked, stepped back, and her voice returned to that calm, practiced tone. "Good night." The candlelight flickered across her face as she turned away. I didn't move until the sound of her door closing broke whatever that moment had been. And maybe that's when it really began, not with her laugh, but with the silence that followed it. It became a pattern neither of us named. A few words in the hallway, a glance through the balcony railing, a favor that didn't need asking. There was always a reason to talk, small, practical reasons, but never the real one. Lena had a way of making every moment feel like it might mean something, even when it shouldn't. The rain came often that month. Power flickered, the air smelled like wet brick, and the building felt quieter than usual. One night, I found her sitting on the front steps, cigarette between her fingers though she never seemed to smoke it. She looked lost in thought, not sad exactly, just suspended somewhere else. Didn't take you for a smoker, I said, trying not to sound like I'd been watching her for too long. She smiled, not looking at me. I don't light them anymore. I just like the habit of holding something. I sat down beside her, careful not to sit too close. You quit? Years ago, she said. Then, softer, he hates the smell. The way she said he was flat, not bitter, not fond. Just factual, like saying, the mail comes at 4. The streetlights flickered, and for a moment, the wind carried a faint tremor through her voice. You ever get used to quiet? She asked. I don't know, I said. Sometimes it's the only thing that feels honest. She turned to look at me then. There was a glint in her eyes that wasn't about what I said, more like she saw something she recognized. That was the first time she touched me. She reached up, brushed something, rain, maybe, off my shoulder. Her hand lingered there just long enough that it didn't feel accidental. Her thumb moved slightly, a soft, thoughtless motion that pulled the air tight around us. You're freezing, she murmured. I wasn't. But I didn't correct her. Over the next few weeks, the small things became harder to ignore. When she brought over leftover soup, her fingers brushed mine as she handed me the bowl, slow, intentional. When I passed her on the stairs, she'd give a quiet hey that somehow carried more weight than any full sentence. I'd catch myself noticing details I shouldn't, the crease at the corner of her mouth when she smiled, the way her hair stuck slightly to her neck after watering plants, the faint freckle just below her collarbone that appeared when her robe slipped loose. And every time I noticed, I'd look away too quickly, pretending to check my phone, to breathe, to reset. But she noticed. She always noticed. One afternoon, she caught me completely, sitting on my balcony, sketchbook in hand, half distractedly sketching the outline of her profile as she read by the window. When she glanced up, our eyes met. She tilted her head, a quiet question in her expression, but she didn't smile. Instead, she stood, disappeared from the window, and 2 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it. She was holding a cup of tea. For the artist, she said, a ghost of amusement in her tone. I wasn't, I know. She stepped past me into the apartment without waiting for permission, setting the cup on my counter. You're not the first to draw me. That caught me off guard. She turned to face me, crossing her arms loosely. Painters, once. Long ago. It's easy to sit still when no one asks who you are. Something flickered in her eyes again, regret maybe, or memory. I couldn't tell. Do you miss it? I asked. She hesitated. Being seen? Sometimes. Her voice broke slightly on that last word. And for a second, everything else, her husband, the ring, the age between us, blurred out. I reached forward before I could think and touched her wrist. Not a grab, not a hold, just a touch, a question without words. She didn't move. Didn't pull back. Her pulse was steady under my fingers, but her breath wasn't. You shouldn't, she said quietly. I know. The silence after that was heavy, full, electric. Then she drew in a slow breath, eyes still locked on mine. You really don't, though. Her hand turned slightly, her fingers brushing against my palm, an answer and a warning in one gesture. The tea on the counter had gone cold, untouched. When she finally stepped back toward the door, I thought she'd leave without another word. But she paused, hand on the doorknob, and said, sometimes, being seen is the most dangerous thing. Then she left, leaving the faint smell of citrus and rain behind, and a warmth on my wrist that didn't fade for hours. It started with a simple knock again. Late evening. Soft rain on the balcony railing. Her voice through the door, calm, almost careful. Are you awake? I was. I'd been pacing, half expecting it without knowing why. She stood there with her hair loose, damp at the edges, wearing an oversized sweater that looked like it wasn't hers. She held a phone in her hand. "The power's flickering again," she said. "Yours too?" "Yeah," I said. "It's probably, the lights cut out." She laughed quietly. "Guess that answers that." I stepped aside to let her in. The air between us shifted, that small, charged difference when someone crosses a line that isn't really physical but feels like it. I lit a candle. The room glowed with soft amber light, enough to make everything slower. She brushed past me, her shoulder grazing mine, a whisper of contact that lingered longer than it should. "Sorry," she said, though her tone didn't sound sorry. "Don't be." She sat at the table, phone face down, fingers tracing the rim of the candle holder. "You ever notice," she said, "how quiet it gets when the lights go out? Like the world forgets to breathe." I nodded, but didn't trust myself to answer. She looked up, met my eyes, then looked away. "He's gone again," she said. "A week this time." The words hung there, uninvited. I wanted to ask if she missed him, but I didn't. I already knew the answer. Instead, I said, "You shouldn't be here." She smiled faintly. And yet. The flicker of the candlelight made her eyes look softer, younger somehow. She leaned her elbows on the table, and the sweater slipped slightly off one shoulder. The bare skin caught the light in a way that made my pulse stumble. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Why do you always look away first?" The question hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. She tilted her head, watching me like she already knew the answer. Before I could speak, my phone buzzed sharply on the counter, a message lighting up the screen. The sound made both of us flinch. I reached for it, saw the name, Jake. My friend. He'd sent, "Coming by in 10. Beer?" My stomach tightened. He's coming over," I said. She blinked once, the smallest crack in her composure. "Now?" "Yeah. I should probably." She stood, moving closer, faster than I expected. "Then we should talk later," she said quietly. But she didn't move toward the door. Her hand brushed mine on the table, not by accident this time. Her fingers lingered, tracing the inside of my wrist. It felt like the air shrank between us. Her voice dropped lower. "You don't have to pretend it's not there." I swallowed. "Lena, I'm not asking for anything," she interrupted, shaking her head. "Just, don't lie to me." The candle flickered again. The shadows moved across her face, her lips parted slightly, breath uneven. She was close enough that I could smell the faint warmth of her skin, the rain in her hair, the sweetness of tea she must have had before coming over. I don't remember moving, just that we were closer. Inches. Her hand on my chest. My fingers at her waist. Neither of us breathing. Then a loud knock, sharp, impatient. "Yo, man, it's Jake." Her eyes widened, heartbeat visible in her throat. She stepped back, her hand dropping to her side. I turned toward the door, pulse hammering. She touched my arm once, a quick, grounding motion. "It's okay," she whispered. "You didn't imagine it." I nodded, unable to look at her. As I opened the door, Jake's voice filled the room with easy noise and laughter. By the time I turned back, Lena was gone, the candle still burning, her scent still in the air. And on the table, under her untouched phone, a single ring-shaped mark of water from her glass, faint, perfect, and impossible to ignore. Days passed, but she stayed in my head like something unfinished. The night she left, the way her fingers slipped from mine just before Jake knocked, replayed over and over, until even silence felt like her. I tried to avoid her. Didn't linger by the stairs. Didn't open the balcony door when I heard her watering plants. Didn't even look toward her window. But it didn't matter. Avoiding her only made the air thicker. Then one evening, she came to me again. No pretense this time, no candlelight excuse, no broken light bulb. Just her, standing in the open doorway, rain on her shoulders, eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. "You've been ignoring me," she said. Her tone wasn't angry, it was steady, almost calm, which somehow made it worse. I stepped aside. She didn't wait to be invited in. "Lena, don't lie," she said, cutting me off. "You think this will make it easier? Pretending nothing happened?" I tried to speak, but she kept going. "You're not the only one who feels it," she said quietly. "You think I don't notice when you stop breathing around me?" The words hit hard, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. She took a step closer, eyes never leaving mine. "You make me feel something I thought I'd forgotten. And I hate that it matters." Her voice trembled slightly on hate. I reached out, then stopped halfway, my hand frozen in the air. "Then why?" "Because I don't know what to do with it." She laughed once, but it was hollow. "You're young. You still believe things can end cleanly. They don't." Her hair was wet, strands sticking to her face. I moved before I could think, brushed it back, my fingers trembling against her temple. She didn't move away. "Lena," she looked up at me, close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of green in her brown eyes. The space between us felt like it could collapse with one breath. "I don't want to ruin anything," I said. "Then why are your hands shaking?" she whispered. The air between us cracked open. She leaned closer, slow, deliberate, her breath warm against my jaw, her hand sliding up the front of my shirt until it rested against my chest. My heart was pounding. Too loud. Too obvious. "You shouldn't be here," I managed. She smiled faintly. "You said that last time." Her thumb brushed the edge of my collarbone. "Say it again and mean it." I couldn't. Instead, I caught her wrist, not to stop her, but to steady myself. Her skin was cool from the rain, her pulse fast under my thumb. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking for the first time. "He doesn't see me anymore." "Not really. And I keep wondering," she stopped herself, swallowed hard. "What?" I asked, my voice low. "If someone else could." The silence that followed was unbearable. The rain outside hit the windows harder, a steady rhythm that filled the gaps between our words. Then she leaned forward until her forehead touched mine. Every part of her was trembling now, her breath uneven, her voice just a whisper against my lips. "Tell me I'm not crazy." "You're not," I said, barely audible. "You're just." The sound of footsteps in the hall froze us both. Voices. Muffled. Too close. She jerked back a step, eyes wide, chest rising fast. Her husband's voice, faint, unmistakable. "Lena? You here?" Her face went pale. She turned toward the door, then back at me, torn between two directions that couldn't coexist. I moved closer, my hand brushing hers once more, just once, before she pulled away completely. "Don't say anything," she whispered. "Not a word." Then she slipped out the side door, leaving it half open. I stood there in the dim light, every nerve on fire, her scent still clinging to my skin. And for the first time, I realized something irreversible had already happened, we just hadn't admitted it yet. The next few days were a blur of pretending. Every time I heard footsteps in the hall, my stomach twisted, half fear, half something I couldn't name. I told myself I wouldn't look for her again, wouldn't risk it. But the harder I tried to ignore her, the more it felt like every sound in the building led back to her. And then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Lena, we need to talk." "Not here." She sent an address, a small cafe 3 blocks away. When I arrived, she was already there. No ring this time. No calm composure either. She was staring at her untouched coffee like it was holding something she couldn't say aloud. I sat across from her, the space between us too small to feel casual. "What happened?" I asked. She looked up slowly. "He knows." The words hit like a jolt. "Knows what?" She hesitated, the kind of pause that says everything else is about to change. "That we talk," she said finally. "That I've been," she stopped, biting her lip, trying to find a safer word. "Different." My throat tightened. "Did he say something?" "He asked who you were. Said he saw us in the parking lot last week." She gave a shaky breath. "You didn't see him." "I thought he'd left already." I tried to remember, that night she'd walked me to my car, standing just close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder against my arm. Her laugh had been quiet, almost nervous. And now, replaying it, I could see the faint reflection of someone watching from a distance. "Lena, he didn't yell," she said, interrupting. "That's the worst part. He didn't even sound angry. Just cold. He told me I should be careful not to embarrass myself." The way she said embarrass made my chest ache. Her hand trembled slightly as she lifted the cup, then set it down again. "I told him there's nothing going on." Her voice cracked on nothing. She took a breath. "I didn't want him to hurt you." The words hung there, too heavy to move past. "He wouldn't, he's not violent," she said quickly. "He just has a way of making people disappear from my life." She looked away then, eyes glistening, jaw tight. Something inside me snapped at that, quiet but final. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. She didn't pull back. "Lena, you don't owe him your silence." She shook her head. "You don't understand. It's not about him anymore. It's about me. I've been lying to myself for years, pretending I was fine, pretending I didn't need anything from anyone." Her fingers tightened around mine. "And then you moved in." Her eyes found mine, steady now, no hesitation. "You saw me before I even remembered how to be seen." For a long second, the noise of the cafe disappeared. Just the sound of her breathing, the faint tremor of her hand under mine, and that unbearable pull that neither of us could name out loud. I should have let go. I didn't. Her thumb moved slightly against my skin, small, deliberate. "People will talk," I said. "Let them." The simplicity of it stunned me. The woman who always measured every word, who held herself like a secret, now saying let them. She stood up, pushing the chair back slowly. "Walk me home," she said. We didn't speak during the walk. Our steps fell in sync, shoulders brushing now and then, her arm occasionally brushing mine. Each touch sent a pulse up my spine. When we reached the hallway outside our doors, she stopped, turning toward me. "Before he comes back," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." The light above us buzzed faintly. She stepped closer, her breath warm against my cheek. "I wasn't just lonely," she whispered. "I was waiting." "For what?" Her eyes didn't waver. "For someone to make me remember what it feels like to want." The hallway felt too small, the air too charged. "Lena, don't," she said, her voice barely a breath. "If you stop me now, I'll never forgive you." Her hand found the back of my neck, trembling but sure. I could feel her pulse through her fingertips. We stood there, inches apart, everything burning and breaking at once, the rules, the fear, the years she'd buried herself under. Then, a sound. A door opening down the hall. She froze, her hand still on me, eyes wide with panic. A neighbor's voice, distant, harmless, but it shattered the moment all the same. She pulled back, breath shaking. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "After he leaves." And before I could answer, she was gone, disappearing into her apartment, the door closing with a soft, final click, leaving the promise hanging in the space where our lips hadn't met. Morning came heavy, thick with the kind of quiet that carries a decision inside it. I didn't see her all day. No sound from her apartment. No footsteps in the hallway. Just stillness, the kind that feels planned. By evening, the air smelled like rain again. I'd almost convinced myself she wasn't coming. Then came the knock. Soft. Hesitant. But hers. When I opened the door, she stood there, coat half-buttoned, hair slightly damp, eyes steady in that way that only happens when someone's already made up their mind. "He's gone," she said. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. The apartment felt smaller now, the air warmer, denser. We stood there for a moment, saying nothing. Then she moved closer, slow enough that I could have stopped her. I didn't. "I told myself I wouldn't come here," she said quietly. "That if I did, I'd cross a line I can't uncross." Her voice trembled on the last word. "Then why are you here?" I asked. She exhaled, looking down at her hands. "Because pretending hasn't helped. Because every time I see you, it's like I'm waking up from something that's been going on too long." She took another step, close enough now that I could see the faint pulse at her throat, could feel her warmth. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. "But I can't keep walking past your door like none of it's real." Her hand lifted, hovered near my face, hesitant, trembling, then brushed the side of my jaw. A touch so light it almost didn't exist, yet everything inside me shifted toward it. "Lena," her name came out quieter than I meant. She smiled faintly, but her eyes stayed serious. "Say it again." "Lena." She closed her eyes, like the sound itself was something she needed to feel. When she looked at me again, something in her had broken open, not fragile, but bare. "You think I don't know what people would say?" she murmured. "That it's wrong, that I should be ashamed?" Her fingers slid down, resting against my chest. "I've lived my whole life being careful. I'm tired of careful." The space between us disappeared. Her breath brushed my neck, my hand found her waist. Every muscle in me wanted to move closer, but I didn't, not yet. "You'll regret it," I said. She shook her head, eyes locked on mine. "No. I'll regret not knowing." The air between us broke then, soft, inevitable. Her forehead pressed against mine, her hand fisting lightly in my shirt. I could feel her shaking, and maybe I was too. "This doesn't fix anything," I said, my voice rough. "I'm not looking to fix it," she whispered. "I just need something honest." Her breath hitched, and I felt it, every word, every silence between us collapsing into this one suspended heartbeat. Then she leaned in, just enough that her lips brushed the edge of mine, barely touching. It wasn't a kiss, not fully. More like a promise caught halfway through becoming real. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "Now you know," she said. And I did. It wasn't just desire. It was something heavier, recognition, maybe. The understanding that we had seen each other too clearly to go back to pretending. She stepped away slowly, her hand slipping from my chest, fingers dragging across fabric until they were gone. Neither of us said another word. She reached for the door, paused for a second like she might turn back, then didn't. When it closed behind her, I realized the quiet she left wasn't empty this time. It was full. And for the first time, both of us understood the cost of being seen, and the truth that seeing each other had already changed everything. It had been a week since she left my apartment. A week of quiet mornings, long walks, and an ache that refused to fade. I'd wake to the sound of her balcony door sliding open, the familiar creak, the faint clink of her watering can, and every time, I'd stop myself from stepping outside. We hadn't spoken since that night. No words, no messages. But silence has its own way of saying everything you can't. Then, one evening, I found a note under my door. The light in the hall's still broken. Can you fix it? Simple. Practical. Like the start of everything between us. I almost laughed. That night, I brought my tools and stood again on that same shaky chair under the same dim fixture. The memory of her hand brushing mine the first time played so clearly it hurt. When the light flickered on, she was already there, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, that quiet, unreadable look on her face. I was wondering if you'd come, she said softly. You knew I would. She smiled, small, tired, but real. Maybe I did. For a moment, neither of us moved. The light above hummed softly, casting that warm, honey-colored glow that made everything look softer than it really was. I've been thinking, she said finally. About that night. So have I. Her eyes flickered up to meet mine. I didn't leave because I didn't want you. I left because I wanted you too much. That landed somewhere deep, the kind of truth that leaves no air behind it. I thought maybe you'd regret it, I said. She shook her head. Regret is what I've been living with. This, she gestured between us, this is the only thing that's felt honest in years. She took a small step forward, close enough that I could see the faint shimmer of light on her eyelashes. But it has to mean something, she added. It can't just be running away from what's broken. I nodded, my throat tight. Then let's not run. She let out a quiet laugh, the kind that trembles at the edge of tears. When I reached for her hand, she didn't hesitate. Our fingers laced easily, like they'd been waiting for it. Her palm was warm, steady. She leaned in slightly, her shoulder against my chest, the smell of rain and jasmine lingering on her skin. You still think it's wrong? She asked. I thought about everything, the age gap, the whispers, the guilt. And then I thought about every silence that had felt like a question between us. No, I said finally. I think it's real. Her eyes softened. She rested her forehead against mine, our breaths mingling in the small space between words. I don't know what happens next, she whispered. Neither do I said. But I know I don't want to stop seeing you. She smiled again, a little braver this time. Then don't. We stood there for a long while, no rush, no fear, just the quiet weight of two people who'd stopped pretending. The hallway light glowed above us, steady now, like it had decided to stay on for good. Her hand stayed in mine as we walked back toward her door. Before stepping inside, she turned, brushing her thumb along my jaw, slow and sure. Stay, she said. Not a question. And I did. The next morning, the world looked different, not louder or brighter, just clearer. She was on the balcony again, barefoot, coffee in hand, the sunlight touching her face. She glanced over and smiled when she saw me watching. It wasn't a secret anymore. It wasn't perfect either. But it was real. And for both of us, that was finally enough. Point 4.